Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Kevin May. I'm the editor and co-founder of tnooz.com. Welcome to another one of our webinars.
Muted.
Or this winter if you're listening from down under. We're delighted that we've put this one together with Amadeus. Thank you as always to Amadeus for supporting our webinars. This is one of many that they've done with us and they've always been excellent. So this one, can big data really transform travel? We'll get to some of that in a minute. As I said, I'm Kevin May. I'm joined behind the scenes today by Gene Quinn, who's my co-founder here at tnooz, and he acts as my glamorous and very, very glamorous producer. He's in Connecticut on the east coast of the US. I'm just outside of London in the UK. So, as we've noticed over the last year or so, maybe a little bit longer, but it's really hard to look anywhere these days without reading an article or going to a session and hearing about big data. It's in conferences, it's in webinars such as these, lots of articles that we've written on tnooz. There is some slight skepticism about big data. Is it just hype, or is it as transformational as some lead us to believe? For sure, big data has impacted many industries, not just travel, and it really is and will do more so over time. Is affecting consumers, in our case here in the travel industry, business and leisure travelers' lives. It does have, we think, and I think our partners here today, Amadeus certainly think so, it has the ability and the potential to really change the future of the travel industry, which everybody knows, and especially people like Amadeus who sit on mountains of data. Everyone has had access to it, and people are doing things around loyalty programs and optimization and things like that. But can it really, really transform travel? So what we're going to do over the next 55 minutes or so, I'm joined here this afternoon my time, by Tom Davenport. He's a visiting professor at Harvard Business School. He'll be talking to us today from Cambridge in Massachusetts, of course. And we're also being joined by Tom Corfin, who's the Vice President of Travel Intelligence Sales at Amadeus. And as I said, Gene and I are involved in this as well. So a little bit of housekeeping first of all. Regular listeners will know that we'll be recording the entire webinar for you this afternoon. And that recording, or the video of that recording, and all the slides that you're about to see over the course of the webinar, we'll be posting up on tnooz by tomorrow morning, tomorrow being Friday. So look out for those in case you have to dip out, or if you're inspired by what you hear this afternoon, please feel free to share around your networks and your colleagues and your friends and your enemies. So we'd like everybody to not miss out if they can't listen in live. We do give you the opportunity to view and listen and look at all the slides afterwards. We will have a Q&A at the end of the webinar today. So one way you can get in touch with us to send in your questions is by simply looking at the questions button, which should be on the right-hand side of your dashboard as you're looking at it. You can send in your questions to us, and we'll get to those at the end during the Q&A when you can grill Professor Tom and Mr. Tom, as we're going to call him from Amadeus. Finally, we'll be interspersing everything with a series of polls, as we always do. So let's have that first poll up, Gene, just so that everybody can familiarise themselves with the system. And it's a very, very simple question for you today. And it is as follows, if you could put the first poll up,
please. Hi, this is Gene. It sounds like we have a little bit of an audio issue with Kevin. Kevin, are you back with us?
I am here, yes.
Yep, we just had a little feedback issue, so we're about to jump into the first poll here. I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, so the first poll, and I hope it's a very, very simple question for you, and as I said, it's just so that you can familiarise yourself with the system, and let's have that first poll up. And it is very simple, I hope. Where are you located? And you can pick one of those four. So North America, Europe, Middle East and Africa, Latin America, or Asia Pacific. So if you'd just like to press the appropriate button there so that we all know where you are today. And while you're doing that, I'll just adjust my microphone so hopefully we won't be cutting out in future. So let's have those results up. And there we go. So just over half of you are in North America today, over a third, 37%, Europe, Middle East and Africa, 5 in Latin America, and 4% of you in Asia Pacific. No huge surprise there on the Asia Pacific, given that it is in the evening or even indeed in the middle of the night. So thank you very much, everybody there, for voting. And now a proper poll so that you can start tell us a little bit about where you sit in this world of big data. So, describe your organization's capability today to use data analytics. Please choose one of those 4 options. We use it in most or all parts. We use it in some parts. We have a data analytics strategy, but we've not executed. Or the final one there, we really just don't know where to begin. And let's see what our temperature check here says with our audience tuning in. Just a couple more moments to get everybody's votes in. And I think we can probably have the poll results now then, Jean. So 41%, just over 4 out of 10 of you say we use it in some part of our business, which I think is quite encouraging. Almost a third there, just over a third, we use it in most or all parts of the business. 19% we have data analytics strategy, we have not executed it. And just a lowly 6%, we just don't know where to begin. So thank you very much, everybody, again, for voting. And I think on that note, just to remind you all, send your questions in. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to Tom Davenport, who, as I said earlier, is a visiting professor at Harvard Business School, and he's based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So good morning from the UK to you, Professor Tom Davenport. We're looking forward to hearing what you've got to say, sir.
Thanks, Kevin. Happy to be here. I am going to say a few words about the study that I did on Amadeus's behalf. There's a picture of it on this slide, and you can download it from their website. We'll tell you at the end how to do that. Even though Amadeus was the sponsor, they pretty much left me alone in terms of saying who I needed to talk to, or certainly any conclusions that I would come to. So it was quite independent. And my conclusion was that this industry overall is at a bit of a crossroads relative to big data. By big data, of course, there are a lot of definitions out there, but I mean data that's sort of too big to fit on one server, too unstructured to fit in traditional databases, or too fast moving to sort of fit into a traditional data warehouse. And I think anybody in the travel industry would agree that there are increasing amounts of this stuff, and also that the business need is there. It's not fun to travel for a lot of people anymore, and we can't know our passengers on a sort of a personal recognition basis the way we used to. Our passengers are our guests, so we need data to help us with that. We need it for operations and so on. Although I think it's fair to say the travel industry is not one of the world leaders in this regard. It was one of the world leaders in establishing traditional analytics 20 or 30 years ago with tools like revenue management and crew scheduling and maintenance location optimization and things like that, this whole world of operations research. But since that time, it sort of rested on its laurels a bit, and other organizations have taken the lead in terms of being quite progressive and aggressive users of analytics. So one of our purposes in this study was to really understand what the early adopters in the industry are doing, with the hope that many other firms would say, I need to do something in that regard as well. So Jean, if you could take us to the next slide, please. So the number one recommendation is, the time to act is now. Nobody I talked to, and I talked to over 20 organizations on Amadeus's behalf, said they didn't think this either was now or would be really important. Several people said it's potentially revolutionary. It's obviously an industry that's had a lot of data in the past, but certainly could do more with it. And if you look at social media data, at data coming from all the smartphones out there, at sensor data of various types that's in every airplane engine and every potentially every hotel room and every smartphone and so on. There's going to be massive amounts of data to address and to analyze. lots of opportunity to get moving and do things like research big data, figure out what its implications are for your business and your segment of the industry, develop a strategy for it. What are the key applications that you are going to be pursuing? Don't just explore the technology, but think about its implications for your key business processes, the kinds of people you will need. Start getting those people in place now, because there is quite a talent shortage in the big data space, people who can both manipulate data and do the necessary analytics to make sense of it. And I think in the airline industry, the hotel industry, every segment of travel, you're not going to do this on your own. You really need to partner with other players and subsectors of the industry to try to develop a more seamless travel experience for passengers. So those, I'll come back to those at the end of my section, but those are some of the general recommendations for what to be doing. Next slide, please, Gene. So it's clear that there's some real opportunities, and Kayak was one of the organizations we interviewed. It is typical, I would say, of the early adopters. It's, you know, an aggregator on the distribution side, like other online travel agencies. It is a heavy user of analytics and big data. You almost couldn't do otherwise, because even if you're just running a website these days, you have to analyze click streams and get some sense of, you know, is your website designed well? Is it optimized well? Kayak, like almost everybody who's successful in that industry, does a lot of randomized testing, often called A/B testing, to decide, you know, is this page more effective than that page at eliciting clicks from customers. They do all sorts of analyses to determine, you know, could we structure our pages more efficiently and so on. But they also do something that I think is, to my mind at least, the highest and best use of big data, which is they use it to provide value to customers in terms of products and services. So one example is this idea of flight price forecasting. You book a reservation, or you're thinking about booking a reservation, and you can be told by Kayak, look, this is likely to drop in price over the next couple of weeks, and so you might want to hold back, or it's likely to rise, so you might want to book now. Enormously valuable for consumers to have that sort of information. Also, even for an aggregator like Kayak to make sure that its prices are the same as those in airline sites requires a lot of real-time analytics, so they focus on that as well. So the kinds of things that organizations can do with big data, certainly better decision support, factoring in big data into decisions that we might have made in the past. You know, is this customer likely to leave us? What price should we charge for our services? These are all decisions that the travel industry has addressed in the past, but add new data to it, like social media data or web clickstream data or whatever, can usually provide a much better predictive model. As I mentioned, the best use, new products and services for customers. One of the best examples that you see of that is at GE, where they have sensors in every aircraft engine now, and are really revolutionizing the way they do service on the basis of the temperature and the vibration and the other types of readings that they're getting from sensors in aircraft engines, and they can do service not at standard intervals, but at intervals that make sense given the kind of data that they're getting from those sensors. And since GE gets about half of its income in those jet engine and gas turbine businesses and so on, it's pretty remarkable that they are really using sensors to change the way they provide that capability. Improved customer relationships is something that I mentioned the travel industry is in great need of, and a really good example there is BA, British Airways, a program called Know Me, where they've taken all the data that they have about customers from their loyalty program and their call centers and their websites and tried to put it together in such a way that it can be used on the front lines by people at check-in counters and on the airplanes with iPads. So it's early days for that, but I think it's a really good sign that they're taking the lead in creating a new generation of sort of customer knowledge. And then big data is also just remarkable for how much cheaper we can do some tasks, and in many cases we can do them faster than ever before. So you have companies like Air France KLM doing a new revenue management model, and they said it wouldn't even have worked on a traditional IT architecture. We had to split it across multiple commodity servers to get the kind of performance that we needed to run this application. And in many cases, those kinds of computing environments are orders of magnitude cheaper. Amadeus is one of the information distribution companies that is making this shift away from the sort of highly proprietary architectures for reservations that we've seen over the last 30 or 40 years to a more commodity server, open source software kind of environment. So those are the kinds of benefits that can be achieved, and some organizations are beginning to achieve them. Next slide, please, Gene. So as I said, there's some pockets of innovation present today. Revenue management was one of the first applications, analytical applications in the industry, and even relatively small airlines like Frontier are doing new approaches to analytics that take into account what competitors are doing in a more sophisticated way. Customizing travel distribution, I think, is probably the most common area. So you have organizations like Hipmunk, a still relatively small online travel agency, but has some interesting approaches. They have for airline flights a misery index, where instead of just ranking by price, you can rank flights by just how much misery is involved in taking it, how many connections, how likely is it to be late, and so on. They take a more positive approach on the hotel side, and there is a much more desirability-oriented index. I guess they think that ecstasy, which is what they do for hotels, is not something we're going to get from airlines much these days. So they have an ecstasy index for hotels and an agony index for airline flights. We're seeing just the very early stages of starting to transform corporate travel. The whole travel management industry is just starting to experiment with the use of big data to really coordinate intermodal travel experiences. If you are on the corporate side, I'd say push your travel management vendor to do this, because they're kind of waiting for pressure from customers. Certainly we see enhancing internal operations. I mentioned the GE capability with sensors. We're seeing that on the locomotive side. So for train travel, we'll have devices in hotel rooms soon that tell us, whether is there actually a human in that room, and so do we need to freshen it up or something like that. And then as I mentioned, with revenue management, the primary value there is to improve pricing and financial performance, and it's already starting to have that effect for organizations like Lufthansa and Air France KLM that have adopted new big data-based revenue management capabilities. Next slide, Gene. So obviously, we need some new technologies to do this. It comes in several different buckets. There's the software bucket, and basically the idea is we need some new software, one, to generate models. We don't have enough humans to do all the modeling necessary, so that's where machine learning comes in. We have natural language processing that processes text and makes sense of it. We have a lot of testing software that compares different versions of websites, for example, to see which gets more click-throughs. We're going to have to develop new infrastructures involving lots and lots of commodity servers. This tends to be a lot cheaper. You can get it in the cloud or you can put it on premise, and it's really the future, I think, of information technology. It's not so much supercomputers, but lots and lots of the kinds of technology that you see in your home PCs. And then, of course, there's the data management side, where we can't deal with this in the traditional sort of TPF, highly structured, even SQL relational database environment. We have to have some new databases, and people tend to focus on things like Hadoop and MapReduce, which are sort of combinations of processing capability and databases. We're talking about very large volumes and also unstructured types of data. So altogether, those technologies really comprise a new information technology environment that we use, big data as shorthand for. Next slide, Gene. You might guess there are reasons why organizations haven't moved quickly here. It's not an easy thing to do. The travel industry is, I think, notorious for having a lot of different places where we park data about our passengers and our guests and our customers. And so creating a data environment where we can analyze all the data, that's what took British Airways a number of years to get all the data in one customer data warehouse. We're going to have these older sort of TPF style architectures around for a while, so how do we have that coexist with Hadoop and the commodity server environments that it runs upon, open source versus very proprietary? All of that has to coexist. The people who do this, as I mentioned, are hard to find. They're often referred to as data scientists, who can both manipulate data in creative ways and also analyze it and communicate effectively about it to decision makers. Tough to find those things in one person. And of course, with big data becomes big nervousness on the part of a lot of consumers about, does this company know too much about me? And organizations have a tough time knowing really what to do in this regard, because what consumers say they want is not often what they seem to actually want in terms of their behavior. They say they want privacy, but then they give away lots of personal information on social media sites like Facebook, and they are only too willing to give away information in exchange for discounts and free goods. So it's, I think, a difficult thing for companies to really know what's going on there. Okay, Gene, I think the last slide for me. Now is the time to act. Some organizations have already done so. You don't want to be left behind. You need to, if you don't know anything about this, read the report, look at some other sources on big data. It's written about fairly widely, as Kevin said earlier. Develop a strategy for your company about what are your key applications, where are you going to target this resource within your company. How's it going to change your business model, your key processes? What will your customers think about it, and so on? Put together the skills, start hiring people with data science capabilities. And as I said, you can't do this alone in this industry. Obviously, you don't want to give all of your core capabilities away at an early stage, but you need to start thinking about how do you work with partners. I interviewed, for example, the head of IT at the Munich airport in Germany. He said, we realize every journey only starts or ends at our facility, so we need to be working with Lufthansa, our primary airline partner. We need to work with other airlines. We need to work with car rental companies to try to provide a seamless experience, and even start to develop some data standards that could ease the process of sharing data and analyzing it across different segments of the industry. So with that, I will stop and look forward to your questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Davenport. Great stuff there. So we're going to have a quick discussion in a moment, but what we wanted to do is another quick poll. So Jean, if we can have that poll come up for our audience. And the question is, where do most data analytics skills reside at your organization? Is it in finance? Is it in IT information systems? Is it in marketing, or is it in multiple departments? And I'm seeing those answers coming in already. Okay, so just a few more of you to vote. I can see. Okay, let's have those results up now then, Jean, please. And they're as follows, just under half, 49%, say it's in multiple departments. And the next one on the highest there is 28% for the IT departments, marketing and finance a bit lower down. So I'm going to bring Jean in a second as well. Professor Davenport, I mean, do those results surprise you at all? Is this kind of skill set going across all departments at the moment at this kind of stage in the evolution of big data?
Well, you know, Kevin, I would say it could be good or bad depending on whether the people in those multiple departments are talking to each other. One of the issues that you find in a lot of companies with traditional analytics and big data is that the activities are very siloed, and the enterprises don't share solutions and technologies and data and people across those organizational boundaries. So if it's in multiple departments and they're all collaborating, that's fantastic. That's the way it should be. But if they're sort of siloed in those multiple departments, that's a real problem, I think.
Yeah, just before I bring Jean in here, I was chuckling away to myself when you said about airlines not, they're not the kind of, it's not the industry that brings about an awful lot of ecstasy. It's much more on the hotel side. Do you think that's because, or if I can rephrase the question, do you sense that if they had a better understanding of what they can do with big data, that they may actually be able to reverse that, indeed, that opinion of them being slightly less on the agony side and more on the ecstasy side?
Well, I think low-budget airlines are probably always going to induce more agony than ecstasy. But if you are a frequent traveler on a non-budget airline, you should be experiencing a lot more ecstasy. And I think that's exactly what BA is trying to do, to say, we have passengers who spend an awful lot with us, and they should be getting much better treatment than they get now.
Okay, Jean, you had a question.
Sure. Professor Davenport, if I may, I'm sure you have a ton of experience analyzing under other industries and their data analytics and data use industries like industrial manufacturing settings, perhaps traditional retailing or consumer packaged goods settings. Can you speak about the experience maybe some of those businesses have had from your observations, and how that relates to the merchandising capability that can be empowered in the travel industry, and how the separation of the merchandising of travel, which for several generations was through intermediaries, not exclusively but largely, like travel agents and travel management companies, and that structural difference in those industries than in those other manufacturing or consumer packaged goods industries or traditional retailing, where it's always been at the coalface of the consumer, how that may put a particular challenge on the use of data in this environment.
Yeah, and that's a good question, Gene. And I think any time you're working with an industry that has an intermediary between itself and the customer, there tends to be a lack of sharing of data, probably, from the customer experience, not, a seamless experience at all. So, I always say, and I think obviously some airlines have been trying to do this, don't give control of your customer data to somebody else, a dealer, an intermediary, or something like that. If you look in automobiles, for example, which has most car companies sell through dealerships, it's the dealers who know the customer, and companies like General Motors, for example, the only way they could learn about their customers was to actually issue them a credit card. And then they were able to start doing some great analytics on their customer data and identify who their best customers were and so on. Until then, the dealers wouldn't give them anything about people who may have bought 5 or 6 GM cars over the years. So try to find some way so that you maintain the customer information about at least your best customers.
Professor Tom, thanks, Gene. Professor Tom, I just had a quick question for you before we go to our other Tom from Amadeus. You talked right at the top of your presentation there about world leaders. Could you identify one single organisation, not necessarily in travel, maybe outside of travel, that you would consider a world leader as a brand in this new world that you've been discussing with us today?
Sure. Well, I think there are some in travel. Caesars Entertainment, formerly known as Harrah's Entertainment, has from the very beginning, for over a decade, I've been studying this topic, and they were a leader then, and I think they're a leader now in terms of knowing their customers really well, at knowing what their customers want, at giving them the kinds of rewards and experiences that they deserve, in exchange for their loyalty and their frequent purchases, so to speak. So they're quite good. I think Marriott has been one of the leaders in this regard, particularly starting at least with revenue management, but moving into web analytics, loyalty analytics, and now even human resource analytics, knowing who the best people are to hire, at least at the coalface level. So there definitely are some impressive organizations in this regard, and even 20 or 30 years ago, American and United Airlines were world leaders. They just have let much of the world pass them by since then.
Okay. Controversial comment there. Thank you for Professor Davenport. So, right, I'm now going to hand over to Tom Cawthon, who I said earlier is the Vice President of Travel Intelligence Sales at Amadeus. He's speaking to us all today from Las Vegas in Nevada. I hope you're staying away from the slot machines. Tom, good afternoon. Good morning to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And interestingly enough, I'm trying to do everything I can to leverage big data to improve my winnings while I'm here in Las Vegas. It's quite interesting to see what we can do with data nowadays.
Okay, thanks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. First of all, let me thank Professor Tom for this excellent overview of big data. Just a terrific summation of many of the things that are occurring in the marketplace today and how important the topic of big data is for all of us in the travel industry. Speaking of the industry, for those of us who have been in the business for a long time, I think we all realize, and Professor Tom alluded to this before, that our industry has done a very good job over the years of using data in various capacities, whether they're operational, they're marketing, their customer service. And to a certain degree, we were very much in a leadership role amongst unique industries in terms of how traditional analytics were used for the businesses. But what we are very excited about now at Amadeus in general is the fact that we see a new convergence or a convergence of new types of data, and that being matched by very, very new types and capabilities of technology that allow us to leverage that data and turn it into meaningful information. And not only is this new technology available to us today, but it's also available in a much more affordable fashion. And so that gives us an opportunity now to really get our hands around the data and start thinking about all of the what if and all of the probable questions that we want to be asking about our customers and the operations so that we can improve the business overall. A great example of what some airlines are doing with big data is in the area of irregular operations. So if we think about the significance of irops in the business, in the last couple of years, we've had numerous examples, whether it's been the tsunami in Asia, in Japan, if it's been Hurricane Sandy off the east coast of the U.S., if it's been a volcano in Iceland. There have been a number of cases where huge irregular operations have occurred, And those airlines that had data and were able to access and leverage that data were able to recover their schedules much more quickly than perhaps other companies that did not have that advantage. Not only is it a question of faster recovery of the schedules, but the ability to reaccommodate passengers based on who they are. If I know who my VIPs are, if I know where my first class passengers are, if I know where my business class passengers are, I can use that information to not only get them back onto their schedules more quickly, but hopefully provide them with an experience that is far more conducive to what they expect and far more beneficial based on who they are. So that's just one example of how big data is being used by airlines to improve their relationships with their key customers. Gene, if we go to the next page, another industry that's doing a lot, and Professor Tom mentioned Marriott as a key leader in this regard, but hotels and the individual properties, hotel chains and the individual properties are doing a lot today to leverage data, both structured and unstructured data sources, to evaluate ways to increase revenues for their businesses. It's a great opportunity for them to use data, for example, to fine-tune products and services that they offer to their customers. They can get feedback in real time from their customers about what they like, what they feel they're missing, what are the new services they'd like to see offered, and they can turn that into products, whether they be room packages, weekend packages, tours with local partners. But all of this can be customized and offered on a localized basis, and this represents a great way for hotels at the property level, at the chain level, to upsell and generate new revenues for the company. Gene, as we go to the next slide, I wanted to spend a few minutes about the travel agency community, because they're a very important part of the overall business model that we work in today. Travel agencies, both those that manage large corporate customers and those that are specializing in perhaps leisure or special markets, are using data to better manage their relationships with their suppliers. So you have travel groups that are working more closely with their airline partners, with hotel partners, with tour partners, with the cruise lines, as an example, to build out products and services that can be packaged based on the preferences of their individual customers. And then again, Professor Tom had mentioned that there's a very important part of using big data to improve the corporate travel programs that are so prevalent in the industry. What can we do with data that can help corporations better manage their travel and expense, better manage the relationships that their customers have with the end user, and in turn, how can we enhance the overall travel experience? These are all areas that big data is being used, or where big data is being used to support the industry. Gene, if you help me move to the next page, I think one of the most important things in the industry is are the benefits being derived by the consumers themselves. It's very important for all of us to keep in mind that at the end of the day, we're here to service the end consumer. And again, great examples are underway in the industry today about how data is being analyzed in real time, how data is being used to create services that allow passengers to have much more relevant search and booking options. In other words, don't show me everything I don't need to see, but show me those things that are most relevant for me. And these are things that can improve the traveler experience. It can be providing the consumer with a much more personalized travel package. And something that I think we're all very big on is the notion of consistent customer service. Are we using data across all portions of the business to provide that consistency that the customers expect, whether I'm at the airport or on the aircraft or checking into the hotel or hiring the car? It's that consistency of service that the consumer is looking for in the marketplace today. That leads me to the next chart, which is to spend a few minutes on the technology itself. And again, both Professor Tom and my earlier comments mentioned that today there are available to us new open systems that can scale, rapidly scale, to manage all of the data that we have available to us in the market and effectively utilize that data to become much more proactive in terms of our decision making. There's a phrase in the business that we call the 3V phrase, which is today we have to deal with increasingly larger volumes of data. We have to deal with an increasingly more complex variety of data, both structured and unstructured, and then the velocity of the data in which this is arriving. Much of that is based on the fact that this is data being generated by machines or systems, the smart technology that we all have available to us. So that's a very important part of why we're at this new crossroads today. We've got the technology to deal with that volume, variety, and velocity. But also something that's very important and we all have to recognize in this industry is, this new capability needs to be able to work with the classic technologies that many of us have embedded in our organization. So that's the notion of operating in a hybrid technological environment. So companies will want to find ways to use both classical but also leverage new technologies to deliver the best information you can to your internal and external customers. That leads me to the next slide, which is to talk about in general what new big data has meant for the industry, for our businesses. Again, as Professor Tom had mentioned, one of the big benefits for us now is much better decision support, and not just in a reactive fashion, not just looking at historical information, but also using data to predict probable business outcomes, to use analytics to think about what may be happening, what will probably be happening, and then what types of business decisions should we make to embrace that change. So with that, I'd like to pass back to Kevin. I'd like to thank all of the audience for listening today, and thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Amadeus, Tom. So we've got some great food for thought there. Before we get to the Q&A, which we'll do in a few moments, and you can still get your questions in. We've had quite a few come in already. Thank you very much to all those that have. We've got one final poll question for you all to grapple with. So, where is the largest business need for big data in your organization? And it's one of those four, please. Improving custom profiles, better targeting, upselling deals and offers, that kind of thing. Personalizing the user experience, or revenue management. If you would like to select one of those, please. Might need a few more moments to come up with an answer. And certainly, so far, the results are a little bit more even than they were in some of the others. So I think it's probably time to put the results up there, please, Jean. Okay, almost neck and neck there. 39% saying better targeting and upselling of deals and offers. Just 4% percentage points behind is personalizing the user experience. And then you've got the other two that you can see on your screen. So let's have the next slide, please, Jean. Yes, and just so you know, you can get this, the report that Professor Davenport was kind enough to put together for Amadeus is available, as you can see there, from amadeus.com/big data. We wrote a story about it a little while ago. It's very interesting. It's a very thorough report. So thank you very much to Amadeus and obviously to Professor Davenport for putting that together. So right, let's dive in straight away to some of the audience questions. We've got about 10 minutes here. So like I said, thank you very much to everybody that has submitted one. You've still got a few more moments. If we don't get a chance to get round to your question, we do take a note of them all, and we'll pass those on to our pair of Toms this afternoon and make sure that someone gets back to you. So I guess this is the one that this is one of the questions that I was going to ask, and this has come from a chap called Greg in the US. Now he says, we've been hearing many of the benefits here of big data initiatives, and it's about new software and infrastructure and server farms and all this kind of thing. At the end of the day, this does all equate to cost. So either one of you, let's go to the professor first. He says, he's interested to hear some of the costs associated with such initiatives, or indeed experiments in inverted commas. And in a supplementary question from Greg, he says, how do these early adopters go about analyzing the cost of, leveraging big data in order for it to, have some meaningful value to a business? So, costs. Who wants to dive in first? Professor Davenport, please.
Sure. Always an important question, and I think you sort of have to look at it. It's hard to look at in general. There are cost reductions, as I mentioned, that are possible through the substitution of big data technology for traditional computing architectures. The software is often free through open source. The hardware is, commodity based. So you can save money if you're just replacing existing applications and putting them on so-called big data technology. But obviously that's not the best use of big data, and you should be doing some data analysis, and you should be creating some new products and services and so on. And I think you have to look at it sort of decision by decision, product by product, in order to figure that out. It is certainly the case, as the questioner suggests, that in many cases you have to spend money to make money or save money, and so some investment is going to be required. And I think that's been one of the problems in the travel industry, particularly on the airline side. It's been a period of low margins, in some cases negative margins, for major airlines, and they haven't really invested in this capability the way they might have been able to in the past. And I think if that situation continues, they may have difficulty transitioning to a big data environment effectively, just because it does take some expenditures.
Yeah, and I suppose an appropriate phrase here, given that our other Tom is in Las Vegas, that I guess you do need to speculate to accumulate. So here's a follow-up question on that from Paul, and this is especially for you, Amadeus, Tom. You talked about the challenges about integrating with legacy travel technology. Would you say then, in your opinion, that perhaps this is one of the major issues that the industry has found with adoption?
Yes, it clearly is a challenge for the industry, because for so many years, many of the companies in the industry have, and I'm speaking across the industry, for many years have invested in, let's call it the previous generation technology that built up fairly robust data warehouses. They've invested in analytical tools and so forth, and for many years did very well with that. I think two or three critical changes that have come forward in the last year or so. One is, again, this enormous growth in unstructured data that is coming forward. So the notion of mobile phones, tablets, and things like that, none of that is going to decrease, but it's going to continue to grow. Combined with this, as again Professor Thomas just mentioned, this move toward commodity-based architecture. So now, at a far lower cost than before, I can put computing platform, I can put computing power on the floor that allows me to do research and analysis that I, as recently as months ago, never even thought I could do. So one recommendation that we've had for some of our customers is to slice off different pilot programs. Think about 2 or 3 areas in the organization, whether it's on the marketing side or on the operations side, on the customer service side, where you think having a new type of information in terms of information value, and do a pilot program. do a test run, and then you can really see the ROI that's derived from that. And then little by little, you start the transformation across the enterprise into the new technologies, the new information. So it's evolution. It's not necessarily a revolution, but it's an evolution as you go forward. But as Tom had said at the beginning of the presentation, now is the time to act. Now is the time to move.
Gene, you had a point you wanted to raise quickly there?
Yeah, I have I want to lead the witnesses here a little bit on the first question about costs, and both were eloquent answers. But I would like to hear, especially from Tom Coughlin, about the people costs involved here. You know, when we talk about down the road, you need to do pilot programs, you need to act now. Yeah, we all know that the computer storage costs are coming down, that the tool availabilities are becoming, you know, much cheaper. You know, the tools are cheaper than the people themselves. But there's a huge transition underway and needs to be underway, it seems to me, about the sorts of people working in the travel industry to handle data analytics. Tom, you're an educator. Professor Tom, you're an educator, and Tom Coughlin, you're a veteran of the industry. Can you both comment on the people transition and cultural costs that are necessary to make all this stuff happen?
Well, this is Tom Davenport. I would say it's a problem at the moment, but maybe not quite as big a problem as we once thought it was. I've recently seen some surveys of the kinds of people that, you know, big companies are using to do big data work as opposed to the kind of startups that we saw in the earliest days in Silicon Valley. And a lot of them are not feeling like they need to, you know, get rid of all of their existing analysts and database people. They're just sort of incrementally adding skills to them. And I think a lot of organizations can do that. The other thing is on the supply side, there are now in the U.S. alone, there are now over 100 university programs that have some degree or certification or major in business analytics or data science, and so I think there are going to be plenty of candidates eventually. You know, there may still be a year or two lag before those people hit the job market, but it's more of a problem today than it will be soon.
And Gene, this is Tom Coughlin from Amadeus. You know, I'd like to add to what Professor Thomas just said, that and what you implied earlier is correct. The cost savings that we are seeing on the technology side, we in most cases, what we're doing is we're reinvesting that on the people side. So yeah, we're taking cost savings on hardware and services and so forth. We are reinvesting that on the people side into positions that we're referring to literally as data scientists, and then using those data scientists and you know, all of the creative thinking that they have to derive new value for our customers. And we expect the ROI from that change in equation to be significant on behalf of our customers. I'd also like to remind everyone about Tom Davenport's earlier comment today regarding partners. So in this transition phase, let's not forget to reach out to our partners, both at the supplier level, at the customer level, at the technology level, to leverage what they have available in terms of resources and knowledge. So this implies a little bit of getting out of the not invented here syndrome. You know, that is going outside of my department to work with specialists that can get me the information I need faster, quicker, less costly, until I build up my capabilities in doing so myself.
Well, and it's clearly an industry that is built now on partners. You know, a lot of the airlines had their own reservations capabilities. Now they turn to organizations like Amadeus for that. And, you know, I think Amadeus is building up its big data capabilities in part to increase the desirability of, you know, being a partner in this space. Is that fair to say, Tom?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, right. So And I think that 5 minutes there answered about 3 or 4 very similar questions to Jean that came in. So thank you very much to everybody that sent those in around training and people skills and all those kind of things as well. So just a couple more minutes then. So Daniel asks, big data is the perfect input for predictive analysis, for predictive analytics. However, predictive analysis might not have an evident and immediate ROI for enterprises. In short, does this jeopardize the adoption of big data? So it is the ROI question. Let's go to you, Amadeus, Tom, first.
Well, I think one important aspect of predictive analytics is, where and how do I apply it? So I think the industry today, we know the industry today has seen some very big benefits coming from the use of predictive analytics in the area of operations. So I mentioned earlier irregular operations and what I can do to improve my recovery. In fact, Amadeus is doing some predictive analytics that we refer to as value at risk. In other words, we look at all of the data components associated with a potential series of challenges in my system. Challenges could be weather, could be flight delays, could be mechanical, could be any number of data sets. But we use all of these data sets to look at all these data sets in a predictive fashion, and then we're actually creating algorithms that advise the operations control management teams of potential value at risk if they do not take certain actions. So value at risk in this context is if you don't move this flight, or if you don't take care of this situation, or if you don't react to this potential weather pattern, you're going to have the following sets of flights and passengers and infrastructures inconvenienced, and then it lays forth a series of recommended decisions to make. So it's a very clear ROI, very clear savings, very nice way to use predictive analytics. In other cases, it's more exploratory, for sure, but I think there we can't lose sight of the need for creative thinking and looking at new ways to derive value from predictive analytics, for example, in terms of customer personalization. So all of us in the industry today are focused on how do we personalize for our customers, and in turn, if I'm more knowing of my customer, if it's more personalized, how do I leverage that for merchandising?
Okay, thank you very much. And we are right up to the hour, ladies and gentlemen, so we are going to have to wrap up. So we did have quite a lot of other questions come in. What I have done is made a note of all of those, and I'll be passing those on to our 2 Toms this afternoon, and hopefully either one of them will get back to you, because there have been some really good, some of them quite technical questions, but some really good questions coming in there. So thank you very much to everybody for those that did submit a questions, and I said apologies that we didn't get around to them. So just a quick piece of housekeeping. As I said earlier, we are recording, or we have recorded the entire show. So that recording and all the slides we'll put up on tnooz.com by Friday morning, so you can replay that or share it around your networks, as I said earlier. So some thank yous then, obviously, to Tom Davenport from Harvard Business School, a visiting professor there, as I said earlier, and Tom Cortland from Amadeus. Terrific. A really good discussion. I suspect and I fear we could have gone on for another half an hour at least, but everybody's time is precious. Not least you, our lovely audience, for tuning in today. Thank you very much, as always, for tuning in, and we hope to have you on once again. Thanks ever so much to Amadeus. We'll speak to you all very, very soon. Thanks a lot.
The organizer has